Chapter 17. Silly child, what nonsense are you talking about? Ray appeared gentle, intending to stroke Siddle's golden hair, but was avoided by Siddle. She let go of Kelson's hand, took a step back, and repeated expressionlessly, "You two are not my parents." The room suddenly became quiet. As she said these words, Kelson and Ray's figures suddenly began to shake, and the surrounding space seemed to be distorted. After a strong shock, Siddle opened her eyes again. She stood in front of the window of this room, the curtains were opened at some point, and from here she could see the entire mountain scenery. Although these beautiful scenes were now hidden in the thick darkness, there were still many people playing in the maze forest in front of the hotel, the lights were bright, and the faint sounds of laughter reached Siddle's ears. Noisy and bustling, the flickering firelight, full of vitality. Siddle raised her hand in confusion, pinching her face hard. She suddenly realized that she was still maintaining a stiff smile. She could even feel the coldness from her fingertips, the cold scent of ice and snow lingering around the tip of her nose. It wasn't a dream. She lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes covering the emotions at the bottom of her eyes. Siddle wasn't just dreaming, she clearly remembered every day she lived at the Overlook Hotel in the freezing winter. She could even remember every semicolon in her notebook. What if? What if she was bewitched by the hotel and killed Kelson on that cold winter day locked up in the mountain, or was killed by Kelson? Maybe she would stay in that snow-covered mountain hotel forever. Siddle turned around and saw two dolls tied together thrown in the room. The Billy puppet and the Annabelle doll tied together were lying quietly on the floor. Siddle walked over with a strange expression. At the crucial moment, Siddle had just come out of the ecstasy of destroying the Overlook Hotel. Perhaps she would have been taken out by her fake parents if it weren't for these two dolls. In the hallucination, what would happen outside room 237, Siddle didn't want to know. Now she roughly understood how this hotel worked. Room 237 was a special place, it could create illusions, and that illusion reflected the scariest images deep in the hearts of those who entered this room. For example, the fear in Siddle's heart. After entering this hotel, there always seemed to be a voice in her subconscious giving her suggestions. Someone would hurt her and her family. After entering room 237, these subconscious suggestions made Siddle face the fear that her family would be in danger. However, what the hotel didn't expect was. Siddle was not only afraid that her family was in danger, but she also used her sharp sixth sense to point her suspicions at the hotel without hesitation. As a result, the hotel's own consciousness was also dragged into the illusion, and was severely injured by Siddle. The hotel had just tried to influence Siddle for the second time. However, the illusion in room 237 originated from Siddle's subconscious, and Siddle's impression of Billy and Annabelle was probably. The two dolls were both crazy and ugly. In order to tie the two together, and to prevent them from harming others, Siddle also glued Billy and Annabelle together with super glue. If they wanted to separate, one of the two dolls would have to endure the pain of losing an arm. Years later, Siddle saw the one-armed Annabelle in the corner of a certain doll shop, but she still didn't know anything about it. After seeing the two separated bodies of Billy and Annabelle in the hallucination, Siddle realized that the Ray and Kelson she saw when she woke up were also just a false illusion created by the hotel. In the first level of the hallucination, the hotel tried to make her lose her mind and make her and her parents kill each other. In the second level, the hotel tried to lure her out of room 237. Obviously, the Overlook Hotel did not succeed. After being exposed, it seemed quiet again. Siddle stood in the room, but she no longer felt the uneasiness and discomfort like maggots in her bones like when she first entered this hotel. Siddle thought for a moment, did not stay in this room but walked past Billy and Annabelle and went out. Everything in the hallway was still normal, but in the hallucination she was used to seeing all kinds of ghosts and monsters lurking in the hallway. Now facing a hotel that was so normal that it couldn't be more normal, Siddle felt unreasonably unfamiliar. Siddle. Oh well. If one day she becomes a pervert, no matter how you think about it, it's the fault of this world. She returned to her room alone. Kelson and Ray seemed to be resting in the bedroom. Siddle didn't bother her parents, she needed to calm down right now. After all, swinging an axe at her father wasn't an easy thing for her. In the first level of hallucination, she even forgot that in her previous life she had lived on the other side of the continent for more than 10 years, only remembering that she was a 7-year-old girl living in a happy family with both parents. And all of that was broken by this hotel. The good family was affected by the Overlook Hotel and almost fell apart. Siddle couldn't bear this situation happening. After learning the truth about the hotel, what she felt was not horror and fear but anger. She wanted to protect her parents. So she picked up an axe and cut down her father, who was fascinated by the hotel, poured gasoline and burned the entire hotel. Siddle sat by the bed, without turning on the lights, silently in the dark. She stared at the floor beneath her feet, touching the wooden wall with her fingers, her bright blue eyes sparkling with an unreadable expression. If what happened in the hallucination really happened in reality, Siddle would not hesitate to burn down the hotel again. After all, strange at first, familiar later. Her long eyelashes drooped, covering Siddle's increasingly cold blue eyes. But Siddle did not expect that the house she actually burned down was not the Overlook Hotel but somewhere else. The cabin of the gas station attendant's relative. On the second day after arriving at the Overlook Hotel, Ray decided to take a walk in the mountains to relax and conveniently went to the cabin in the woods near the hotel to see what tools were needed to clean up the cabin. When Ray asked Siddle if she wanted to go with her, Siddle was silent for a long time before she looked up and calmly looked at her. "Mom, I'll go with you. But you have to wait for me a moment." Let her see what kind of stuff was in that wooden house in the woods. Ray smiled and agreed, "Okay, honey, I'll wait for you in the car." Ray was in a good mood because she could take her anxious daughter out to relax, although today she gave her a strange feeling. She always felt that her daughter was different. Siddle pursed her lips, her face was a little pale. She tried to smile, and obediently nodded, "I'll be back soon." She quickly turned around, sat in the passenger seat, fastened her seatbelt and quietly looked out the window. Ray tried to talk to her daughter, but Siddle replied seriously, "Mom, don't talk to others while driving. Pay attention to the road ahead, especially on steep mountain roads like this." There were thousands of roads, safety was the first line. Driving without rules, Siddle felt that even without the Overlook Hotel taking action, she might die on this mountain today. According to the strange things she had seen so far, if spirits really existed, maybe after she died, she could turn into a local god or a little girl in red. In the future, if any idle tourists were to come to this wild and deep mountain for a picnic, there was a high chance that they would meet her, who had turned into a spirit, on the way. Siddle indifferently speculated, even coming up with a big play for herself. Siddle suddenly remembered that this was Europe and America. According to American customs, she probably wouldn't become a spirit but would be summoned back by those who remembered her, and as a result she would be replaced by some random ghost, and she herself would enter an intermediate host and become an ugly ghost doll like Annabelle, and that ghost doll would also be named Siddle Christian. Being reminded by Siddle, Ray felt a little guilty. "Okay, I know." She thought that she was definitely not hallucinating. The Siddle she saw today had grown up inexplicably. It even made her feel like she was a grown adult and she was a child. On the way, the scenery was indeed very beautiful. Siddle rested her chin on her hand, recalling the journey of the past few days, quietly sighing, and added another entry to the small notebook in her heart. After, "Never casually adopt an orphan," and "Never casually bring home things of unknown origin," Siddle silently added another sentence. "Don't casually move house." She always felt that life was becoming more and more magical. Perhaps in the future she wouldn't need to actively search for it, but strange things would come to her as soon as she left the house. The truth proved that Siddle's worries were well-founded. After seeing the old but still intact wooden house, Ray was surprised by the ingenuity of the owner of the wooden house. She also admired that people had a skillfully made wooden house in such a beautiful and poetic mountain and forest setting, so that they could come and rest at any time. It was truly a blessing. Siddle. She rubbed her thin, white arms with hairs standing up due to the cold feeling, not wanting to open her mouth to speak. Since getting off the car and arriving in front of this wooden house, Siddle had felt a chill running down her spine. In fact, from the moment she was the only one who saw the little girl Annabelle, Siddle had begun to suspect something. It seemed that she, suddenly had a physical ability to see ghosts. When facing Billy, she appeared indifferent on the outside, but in her heart she wanted to kneel down and send this great god away. She could even feel that Billy's resentment was much stronger than Annabelle's, but in Ray's eyes it was just a somewhat ugly ventriloquist puppet. However, it was clear that the Overlook Hotel was much stronger. After Siddle wrapped Billy and Annabelle up and threw them into room 237, they were as obedient as quails. Ray walked over to observe the wooden house in amazement. Siddle stood outside. Without thinking much more, she quietly took out a flashlight with a purple light. Influenced by Esther, Siddle had a deep impression of ultraviolet rays can reveal blood stains. In fact, she remembered that a better method, such as luminol reagent, could turn the areas where there were blood stains into a bluish-white color. The effect was much more obvious than ultraviolet rays that could only reveal brown soil. She slowly walked around the wooden house, using a flashlight with purple light to scan the surrounding land. There seemed to be no trace on the lush grassy mud. Siddle knelt down with a frown, and ran her fingers through the thick grass to reveal the layer of dirt underneath. Before long, Siddle thought emotionlessly, looking for brown soil on the brown soil was really not a wise decision. She was sure that something bad had happened here, but she had no way of knowing what it was. Behind the wooden house was a patch of forest. Siddle glanced at Ray's mother who was standing beside the wooden house. She hesitated for a moment before taking her small flashlight and walking towards the forest. Apart from the dense branches and flat ground, there were only a few sparse green spots. It was completely different from the dense grass outside. This scene was really strange. Siddle quietly shone her flashlight on the ground, trying to find traces. She originally didn't expect much, but she actually found traces.